Hey everybody, it's Mr. Mott. What we're going to do is go through where we get our water from. We're going to compare and contrast urban versus rural environments. Urban environments are going to be sort of like a city type environment. This could be a big city like Chicago or even a smaller city like Rolling Meadows. We both get our water from Lake Michigan. So from Lake Michigan, what's going to happen is that it's going to be pumped over to a pre-treatment plant. Before it gets there, they're going to do some big screening, or it's just sort of right before it goes into the treatment plant. They're going to do some screening. And so any large objects that may have fallen into Lake Michigan, that's going to work on screening those out. Could be big tree branches, could be shoes, anything that maybe fall off, boats, or get in there somehow from pollution. That's what the screens are going to do initially. The treatment plant is sometimes called a water treatment plant. It also might be called a pre-treatment plant because it's being treated before it goes into our home. So a water treatment or a pre-treatment plant goes by all those names. Lake Michigan water overall is really, really good. So they might, but they still need to do things like maybe adjust the pH, kind of fine tune that. They're going to chlorinate the water. Okay, so they're going to add chlorine to that water. It's going to help kill bacteria. They can also use ozone for that. Some different treatment plants are using a combination of those or just possibly one of them. So ozone or chlorinate to kill bacteria. They're going to add fluoride to the water to help our teeth. They could also, if there's any sort of cloudiness to it, they're going to add some things to make the cloudy particles clump up. They call that stuff floc. So the process is called flocculation. And once everything's all good, then it's going to go from our pre-treatment or water treatment plant to a pumping station. It's going to send that water out to all of our homes and so forth. They're also going to send it out to water towers. And so that's what this says here, water tower. It's important to realize what a water tower actually does. It's not really just sort of a reservoir of water. Water towers are all about water pressure. And so if you've got several things going on in your home, as far as like, you're using the water in the sink, you're showering, maybe you're watering your lawn, someone uses the toilet, you want to maintain your water pressure, and that's the function of the water towers. All right. Once we use that water, it goes from our house down to the sewer. It's important to realize that all that water that we use in our house, from the toilet, from the sink, to the showers and so forth, they all go into the sewer. And then all that sewer water needs to be treated. It's going to go to another treatment plant. And so this is sometimes called a sewage treatment plant because your sewage is going there. Sometimes this is called a post-treatment plant because we're treating the water after we've used it. All right. So they've got obviously some additional things that they'll need to do to make sure that water isn't bad for the environment. So they're going to do a lot of the same stuff they did up here. They probably are not going to add fluoride at this point, but they're going to have to let the large particles settle. So there's going to be some settling areas. So all that poop and so forth gets settled down. They're still going to do some similar things like probably add some flocculant to get that cloudy particles that didn't sink down to the bottom in the settling. The floc is going to take care of those cloudy particles. They're probably going to chlorinate as well or do ozone to kill bacteria and a minor pH adjustment as well. So they're going to do a lot of the same things. They're just dealing with all that sewage that has gone into the sewer at that point. Now once it's done being treated there, it's going to be about 95% clean. And so really, really clean water. So totally acceptable to take that post-treatment water that's 95% clean, put it back into the Des Plaines River or another body of water. Totally fine to do that. But oftentimes what happens is that this water is not only it's so clean at this point, but we also need to be able to recycle our water. And so a lot of times, instead of going to to a body of water like the Des Plaines River, we're going to take that water and we're going to send it back to a water treatment plant. And so, so we're actually going to recycle a lot of that water. We need to do that because there's not a whole lot of fresh water in the world. Of all of our water in the world, only about 3% of it is fresh water, and only about less than 1% of that is water that is accessible to us, that we can access and use. All right. So that's where an urban or a city environment is going to get our water from, and then they're also going to, and then we're going to compare and contrast now a rural environment. All right. So if we go to a rural environment, this would be an environment where maybe there's a lot of space in between homes, out in the country, out in the mountains, where it's not feasible to or cost effective to run a whole lot of pipes and that sort of thing. What our house would do at this point is that they're going to drill a pipe down into the ground until they reach an aquifer. That's what got cut off in our photocopy down here, is an aquifer down here. And they typically just call this a well. Well is a very long pipe drilled down into the ground. The aquifer is a bunch of porous rock, where as the water drains down and gets filtered through the ground, it settles in this porous rock area. And that's what we typically just call a well. So it's a big pipe. It's got a pump on it to pump it into the home. Now, sometimes there needs to be some water treatment or some pre-treatment step that's done at this point, because as the water sits in the aquifer, sits in that stone, the water can dissolve some of the minerals, some of the ions that are in there, and that's going to take that up through there. And so sometimes, depending on the well, depending on the aquifer, you might have what's called hard water, which has more like calcium and magnesium in it, and that can have a different taste. It can affect your pipes differently. So oftentimes you might have some pre-treatment process happening. That water kind of goes through some filters before it goes into your home. And so that's some minor pre-treatment that might be happening, but nature does a super job of getting that water that's in the aquifer to be very, very clean. So that's a really important thing to recognize. Similar to the urban environment, once it's used, all that water goes in the same place, but instead of going to a sewage treatment plant, it goes into this tank, and this is more appropriately called a septic tank. And so a septic tank is going to do lots of chemical and biological things to be able to make sure that that waste is treated, it's neutralized to the best sort of its ability. And once that water that's in there is clean enough, it'll release that water into what's called the septic field, which is just the soil that's nearest, that is near the septic tank. You still have things like some organic materials, some biological materials in the tank, and about once a year, you're going to have like a truck come out, and that truck is going to need to pump out. They're going to need to pump out that that sewage. So maybe 1 to 2 times a year, that pump is going to come out and empty out any kind of organic materials that have built up in the tank. It all depends on how big that septic tank is. It depends on how big the house is and who is living in the house. All right. So very cool, very simple process for a rural environment to get their water, as long as they have a good well and their septic tank is in good order. They have all the amenities of an urban environment. All right. Hope that was informative. Thanks for watching.